This is episode 48 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Mike DeHaan. Mike, prior to his career in real estate investing, was an engineer at Boeing, but since 2018, he's been involved in over 200 acquisitions between residential and commercial real estate. He owns Backyard Home Buyers, and he is also the host of Collecting Keys podcast. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. I always like to start before you got into real estate investing kind of full time or even the beginning. Did you have an interest in real estate growing up?
No, I did not at all. My parents bought the house that I grew up in before I was born. So I was born in 90. My parents bought the house in like 87, and that's the house that they owned. So
yeah,
it's no real estate experience at all.
It's interesting. I'm just guessing. I probably say more than 50% of my guests have said before I got into it, it wasn't a major interest, which is really interesting to me. So what led you to the path to get started in real estate investing?
There was kind of a couple different things, right? So I guess like the very early initial phase in interest in real estate came from when I was working at Boeing. My wife and I, we had just had our rent down in Tacoma basically double overnight, right? And we were looking for somewhere else to live. And I started just researching, payments and stuff like that, and found that at that time, this was 2015, mortgage payments would be less than rent in that market. And I was like, why don't we just buy a house? Like we can do that. We had a little bit of money. So very coincidentally, we're like, I don't even know how to buy a house. I didn't even know you had to contact a realtor. We were literally just driving home from the grocery store, and we're like, oh, there's an open house. Let's just go see what that looks like. And we just pulled up to this house, and there was a realtor there, the listing agent, and that ended up being the guy that we worked with to buy a house, right? That worked perfectly well for him. And so it just coincidentally happened that he was very involved as an investor. He owned a lot of rental properties.
Yeah.
He had a investment-minded brokerage, and kind of gave us the bug a little bit. And then when we left Tacoma to move back to Spokane, Washington, where I live now, we called him up and we're like, hey, we're moving back to Spokane. We're going to sell our house. And he said, why don't you keep it and rent it? Like, unless you need the money out of it, which we didn't. And we're like, cool, that sounds great. He said, sweet, I'll be your manager and you can rent the property. And that was our first rental. So that gave us a very, very basic interest. And then moving forward, I still wasn't planning to pursue real estate as a career. When I decided to leave the corporate world in 2018, it was very beginning of 2018. I didn't have any sort of plan. Definitely didn't have any plan to get into real estate. I just pulled the cord and decided I was going to do anything except be an engineer. And real estate basically just ended up on the radar because as I read every single business book, every book about passive income and wealth generation, real estate was the reoccurring theme. Yeah. So it entered the picture that way.
Yeah. Well, what was your pitch in the marketing at that time? Were you doing cold calls or were you sending postcards and returns? And what type of, ROI were you getting, or at least percentage returns on those?
Yeah. So we do direct mail. We started with direct mail. We still use direct mail for our primary deal source. We do some like more prospecting stuff like SMS and cold calling a little bit, but direct mail is just tried and true. The pitch that we had on that was nothing crazy. Like we always really leaned as we were starting to scale up. We do it a little bit differently now because we've gone virtual and we've scaled out to a bunch of different markets. But when we were just here in Spokane, we would really heavily lean on being fully transparent and being like a, shake hands, face-to-face, be relatable kind of company. Mm-hmm. And that gave us a leg up over all the people that were not doing that were like trying to hide behind a carrot website or like not put their faces on things. Because you could go to our website and the first thing that you would see would be us. You would see pictures of our families. You would see pictures of projects that we had done. And that gave us a huge competitive advantage over everybody here.
Yeah, that's it. those are really, really smart principles. I hope everybody got those, because I think that the failure in wholesaling is exactly what you said. It's the cards where you go down, a website, you don't even know who's behind it. You don't know if they have anything. The things that, so when I used to do off market more and I showed up for appointments, I would always say the same thing. I would say, well, I'd be in a room, there'd be 5 wholesalers that I knew, and I wasn't a wholesaler. I was looking to buy. And I'd say, well, ask everybody for their proof of funds now. And most of the wholesalers didn't have a proof of funds, or at least some form of, this is where I get my money. So I knew, that was going to be it there. But part of what you're saying is related to that, is like, you're a company. So then you become a family business. Look, we're a family business that buys houses instead of the traditional kind of expectation of wholesalers, which has been earned as like kind of a little bit shady. Yeah, I think the old way was like any call in on something is good, but it's really not for people who want to be efficient, because I don't want to talk on the phone anyway. So I really only want to talk to someone who's like ready to sell and wants to sell to me, because I don't need to go through another vetting mechanism. There's other options out there. It seems like, you developed a trust funnel instead of a sales funnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the other way works. You just have to have a stronger sales team.
I agree.
And so like when we were operating here locally and we were relatively small operation, our sales team, our sales manager, our one, wasn't, a pit bull. He wasn't crushing it. He was mostly representing us and just having the conversations. But like with how our model right now has changed a lot. So in, I guess mid 2022, it was actually about this time, we knew that the market was starting to get a little bit fluffy, especially where I'm at. North Idaho area, Eastern Washington was a really crazy market in 2021.
Yeah.
There's some of those properties that I mentioned that I bought in 2018. I did a cash out refinance at the end of 2021. And there was like 2.5x value what I bought them for. So that's in like 4 years.
Yeah.
So I was getting a little bit weird. And then the big red flag, we flipped this 300 square foot little cabin kind of up across the street from a lake, which is like a super mediocre lake that many people go to, but it was like 300 square feet and we sold it for almost 300 grand. And we were like, okay, this is getting bad. Like we need to start looking outside of here. And so we almost shut down our business here, or at least like super scaled it down and started going to virtual markets. And doing more of a low-hanging fruit model.
Yeah.
And with how we operate now, we do a little bit more of like a spray and pray method.
You've developed systems, so at least your spray and pray is intentional, so they can get into the funnel, and then you can still apply the same principles. I get that.
Yeah. And it's much more of a sales heavy business now. And there's still a lot of intention and systems around how we market and who we push to the website and how exactly that all looks. But, our sales team needs to be much more refined and much higher skilled than they needed to be when we were face to face.
I feel like a lot of the bigger companies do what I call spray and pray, which is just like they're just mailing like 20,000 postcards to everyone and just, but I found whenever I did over marketed, my appointments were terrible personally. You show up and they're 300,000 over the price that it's worth. And you're like, why did I even come here? You try to vet it on the phone, but those more aggressive postcards get worse appointments. So your postcards probably developing better appointments because people started to get to know you. I always tried to create appointments where I was the only one there. I don't like competition. It's boring to me like that.
Yeah. So there's some different things you can do, to just make that more effective, right? They do the spray and pray, but we do that a little bit as well, but there's a methodology to it, right? So, when we're starting to market to people, we have like a sequence that we run that we repeat about every 6 months.
Yeah.
We start with usually some brand heavy stuff so that it gets our brand top of mind. It stands out. It's professionally designed. It gets them to think about us. We'll follow it up with different like letters and things like that sort of reference each other and they build off and they create a story. And the goal with a lot of it is to push it to the website because then they can learn more about us. And then also too, when they go to the website, we're very heavily with retargeting online. So they go to our website and they start to see us all over their YouTube videos and their recipe pages and everything. So it's the same concept that you hear with all marketing businesses, where you need to get in front of somebody 14 to 17 times before they'll do a transaction. It's the same thing in this business. We just try to make that 14 to 17 times happen as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And just really being intentional about that, as opposed to here's like 25-cent yellow letters that, or yellow piece of paper that we're sending out that don't really encourage any sort of conversation or investigation from the seller. You know, it just allows us to be a little bit more competitive than that.